We have to cover the insanity of these federal prosecutors in the United States Attorney's Office for the Southern District of New York and their crazy resignations involving Eric Adams. I think you need to know just a little bit about why their position is absurd to make you the smartest person in the room. Let's talk about it right now. Hey folks, I'm Mark Smith, host of the Four Box of Diner, proud American gun owner, constitutional attorney, member of the United States Supreme Court Bar, and I'm proud to say the top voice of the Second Amendment at the 2025 Gundies Awards. Thank you so much for your support. A lot of great competition out there. We're all in this together, as Ben Franklin once said. If we don't hang together, we will most assuredly hang separately. He said that to the people that signed the Declaration of Independence. I think that lesson holds true, very much so, for the Second Amendment community. We must stand together in all respects, or we will all be in big trouble separately. Okay, folks, so I hate having to cover these stories, but they're in the news, and I'm concerned that people will not quite understand them and will get duped by a lot of the anti-Trump, anti-American agenda items out there by the mainstream media. So some of this high-level legal stuff I'm going to have to cover just to make sure you get it right. I think it's very important here, and I'm uniquely situated to be able to talk to you about all this stuff. I even spent 6 months working as an intern at the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Southern District of New York, so I'm quite familiar with all of this stuff and these people and everything else. Okay, so let's just talk about what the issue is, and let me tell you why it's all nonsense and anti-Trump nonsense in my opinion. Bottom line is this. Eric Adams is the mayor of New York City. He was indicted by Joe Biden's Department of Justice through the United States Attorney's Office for the Southern District of New York after Eric Adams had come out raising questions whether or not the open border policy of Joe Biden made a lot of sense and pointing out it was costing New York City tremendous amounts of money, and quality of life issues were arising all because of this open border issues where illegal aliens and other quote-unquote refugees were all coming to New York City and basically hanging out there. After Eric Adams raised these issues, which was counter to the Joe Biden position that the border was secure, guess what happened? Eric Adams was indicted on various fraud and corruption-related charges, which in the grand scheme of things looked a little bit weak tea. But we're not going to talk about those charges because I don't really care about them. I want you to understand really the constitutional dynamic here, which is getting basically glossed over by the mainstream media, in fact, flipped on its head. So what happened is that Donald Trump's administration, through Tom Homan, the immigration czar, has obviously been talking to Eric Adams, the mayor of New York City, about how do we deal with rounding up, if you will, these illegal aliens and other people that should not be in the country who happen to now be physically located in New York City, and how do we get this done? Obviously, it seems to me what happened was that Eric Adams and his lawyers, I'm guessing, this is just makes a lot of sense to me, and I don't think there's anything wrong with what I'm about to say, that Eric Adams and the Trump administration cut some sort of a deal, which I think is perfectly fine, happens all the time with prosecutors, and the idea is essentially that Eric Adams was going to open up Rikers Island and other sources and resources for immigration enforcement, ICE, and Tom Homan and the Trump administration to try to round up these illegal aliens in New York City and kick them out of the country, which is great. But Eric Adams apparently was making the case that he is being very distracted by this unjust prosecution by the United States Attorney's Office in the Southern District of New York. Remember, every United States Attorney's Office falls within, you guessed it, the executive branch, which means, you guessed it, Donald Trump, as the commander-in-chief who oversees the entire executive branch, oversees and runs the executive branch. Now, the historical reality involving the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Southern District of New York, which is based in Lower Manhattan, is in their own minds, they are legends in their own minds, and they think they are the fourth and the fifth independent branch of government, separate and apart from politics and everything else. That is all hooey. I can assure you of that. So what happened here is that Donald Trump's administration obviously worked out some arrangement with Eric Adams that says, look, we're going to stop this prosecution of you, which we think is probably a little unjust anyway, because it looked very suspicious that they targeted you only after you spoke out against the Biden administration. Next thing you know, you're in hot water like all the other Trump supporters and Donald Trump speak out against Biden. Bad things happen to you all across the board. And I think they said that we understand this. And Eric Adams says, if I can get get this headache of this legal case and the threat of going to prison, off my shoulders, if you will, so I don't have to worry about it. I can, be much more accommodating and help you focus on these illegal alien things because, of course, it's very time consuming and mentally distracting to deal with the fact that they're trying to put me in prison in that office that you oversee. And obviously some arrangement was had. And basically the relevant people at the Justice Department appointed by Donald Trump reached out and picked up the phone and called the Southern District of New York and said the following: drop the case against Eric Adams. You can do it without prejudice, which means at some point maybe it can be brought again. But for now, drop the case, stop it, stop, verboten, bye. Don't do it anymore. We have bigger fish to fry, basically. Well, it appears as if the prosecutors in that office in Lower Manhattan had a little hissy fit. Now, as to whether or not they really had a hissy fit, or they viewed this as an opportunity to resign with virtue signaling out the door to write these sort of letters about, oh, I'm an intellectual giant, I went to all these things, I clerk for all these people, I have all these elite credentials, and I oppose being told by the president to involve politics in my decision to not pursue Eric Adams. Okay, so that's what's starting to happen. So these prosecutors in the Southern District are starting to retire and resign from the office in a huff, claiming that it was wrong for Donald Trump and Maine Department of Justice officials out of Washington to tell them to stop this case. Now, this is why it's all hooey. That's the backdrop. Here's why it's all hooey. Okay, let's just think about this from a common sense point of view. There's two main points I want you to keep in mind. Number one, the President of the United States has what power given to him by the United States Constitution itself? Oh yeah, that would be called the power to pardon people. Donald Trump literally has the constitutional authority. The highest law in the land gives him and him alone the authority to pardon Eric Adams. Do anything he wants, he can pardon him right now. You see how stupid this is? That Donald Trump has the power to pardon Eric Adams, and yet when Donald Trump's people turn to the prosecutor and say, you know what, hold off prosecuting him for now. We have bigger fish to fry. We're trying to work things out. We really want to deal with this immigration issue. This is a much more important issue than going after Eric Adams, the mayor of New York City, for crying out loud, on very sketchy grounds. Okay, you see what I'm saying? That Trump obviously has the power to basically engage in leniency or clemency or amnesty, whatever you want to call it, by virtue of pardoning Eric Adams. So again, the constitutional structure literally gives Trump the authority under the Constitution to basically be lenient on someone like Eric Adams, just as a matter of constitutional law. So anyone that suggests that Donald Trump and his team doesn't have this authority or this is totally wrong hasn't read the Constitution and doesn't appreciate that clear constitutional power. Number one. Number two, and this is another common sense point that's not being talked about in the press, but you will know it because I'm making you the smartest people in the room when it comes to the law. And in order to defend our right to keep and bear arms, you need to understand all this dynamic. It makes you better in fighting for our right to keep and bear arms and the other rights as well. Let's just think, what is the structure of American government? What are these notions of federalism about? What are these notions of separation of powers about? What is the notion of all the branches are fighting amongst each other? What is the idea of all of these things where, the senators are 6 years, the House is every 2 years, the president is 4 years, and they all have different branches and different areas of responsibility and control? What is all of this about, big picture wise? You know what it's about, and that is this. It's about making it hard for government to overreach and put individual Americans in prison or to otherwise take away their rights and freedoms. So the whole system is designed to make it hard and create lots and lots of obstacles before someone can lose their rights, their freedoms, their right to keep and bear arms, their ability to walk around town, their right to property, and so on. It's a one-way ratchet if you think about it. Now, what is going on with this debate between really Donald Trump's Department of Justice team on the one hand and these handful of prosecutors on the other hand in New York City? Think about it for a moment. The prosecutors in New York City are arguing what? They're saying, we want to go get Eric Adams. We want to take the entire power and all the resources of the federal government and drop it on top of Eric Adams' head. Go get him. We want to put him in jail and go, yeah, we put him in jail. We're tough guys. And Donald Trump's team is saying, no, we want to give him some leniency. We want to give him some clemency. We want to give him a break. We want to stop the federal government from dropping all of that oppression on top of his head in this context. Now, I will say this. If the shoe were on the other foot, it would be a different situation, and I would be sympathetic to the prosecutors. And what that means is this. If the prosecutors were saying, look, Donald Trump came to us and said, put Eric Adams in prison, do whatever it takes to put Eric Adams in prison, go find a crime. Well, that would be different, because that would be using politics and pressure to force prosecutors to go put someone in prison unjustly. That would be a basis, in my opinion, to resign and to write a letter and to complain and say, look, I'm not here to do the political bidding of one political party against another political party by engaging in lawfare. But this is the exact opposite. Donald Trump is telling the U.S. Attorney's Office, over whom Trump has complete control, because he can appoint the U.S. Attorney there and other positions and so on, and he controls the Attorney General of the United States, who is the boss of all these 51 or so U.S. Attorney offices. Donald Trump is actually telling those prosecutors the reverse. He is telling them, don't go after him. Don't take the weight of government and drop it on Eric Adams' head. Even if you have a case, don't do it. So you see, it's the prosecutors who want to put Eric Adams in jail are out of line, in my view, not Donald Trump. Donald Trump is well within his rights to demand what he is demanding, and those prosecutors have every obligation to follow through. Now, the last point I want to make about this is this notion of it's improper to be cutting deals, it's improper quid pro quo, total BS. Every day in America, prosecutors cut deals for stuff, for quid pro quos, for something they want to get out of targets of criminal investigations. Maybe they say, look, we're going to cut you a deal. You're going to stay out of prison, but in exchange, you're going to wear a wire. And you're going to walk around all your friends and family members, and we're going to listen in because you're going to be wearing a wire. Or maybe it's, you're going to plead guilty, and we're not going to spend 3 weeks at trial because you're going to plead guilty to lesser charges because we don't want to spend 6 weeks at trial and waste a lot of money. That might be the quid pro quo. Or maybe the quid pro quo is you're going to cooperate with us because, you used to work for someone who's a big wig, famous person, and now you're going to become our witness, and we're going to meet with you 1,000 hours a year to really get ready and go get that celebrity, go get that famous politician, go get that business person, whatever it is. You see what I'm saying? All those examples I just described are deals or settlements or agreements whereby the prosecutors, the U.S. Attorney's Office, gets something in return for leniency toward a criminal target or a potential criminal target. So to suggest now that somehow that the federal government is going easy on Eric Adams in exchange for Eric Adams opening up New York City and doing other things helpful to the fight against illegal aliens, that makes a lot of sense, right? Why wouldn't you cut a deal that says one allegedly illegal guy who may have done something wrong, we're going to let that slide, but in exchange, he's going to help us put tens of thousands of criminal aliens in the hoosegow and then deport them back to their home countries and get them out of America. That, to me, would be a good deal public policy-wise. And remember, the allegations against Eric Adams, and I'm not an Eric Adams fan or anything like that in any respect. I'm not suggesting that. But the reality is, these allegations against Eric Adams, again, no violence associated with any of this, right? This is supposed some sort of a corruption issue or something like that. We don't know any of that's true. But again, it does seem highly suspicious, the timing of it, which all of a sudden, this all comes to light, this all comes to the fore as soon as he starts attacking President Joe Biden, and then President Joe Biden's Department of Justice goes after Eric Adams. I would say, no, that's just a coincidence. But for the fact that it was Joe Biden's Department of Justice that did all that nasty business against those January 6 protesters, the pro-life people that were protesting abortion clinics, all those Trump supporters, and Donald Trump himself. So, yeah, count me as skeptical of the Department of Justice that they're really truly organization with a lot of integrity and trustworthiness. I don't trust them, and I don't view them as having lots of integrity as a Justice Department, but I think Donald Trump is going to fix a lot of this. And the last point I want to make specifically about these prosecutors retiring or resigning, I would not feel sorry for them, because you know where they're all going to go? I know these types of people. I know lots of these types of people. You know where they're all going to go? They're going to be making 7 figures next week at some major New York City law firm, of the kind of firms that I used to work for. They're going to be making multiple millions of dollars. And they're just doing this on the way out before they, get their big paychecks at the big law firms, of which I'm quite familiar, and I can probably list them off the top of my head as the firms they're probably going to go to. But again, whether they go there or not, it doesn't matter. The point is that as a matter of law, policy, and constitutionality, I think Donald Trump is correct. He oversees this. He is granting clemency to Eric Adams. He is not asking someone to take the government and put someone in prison. He is doing just the reverse. And given the fact he has the pardon power, means he absolutely has the ability to go easy on Eric Adams, because he can always pardon Eric Adams, and no prosecutor can do anything about that, because it's literally written into the Constitution. All right, folks, so there you have it. Again, sometimes we have to talk about these non-Second Amendment things, because these are also the people that will put you in prison if you violate federal gun control law. So it's important to at least have some understanding about how federal prosecutors think, because they're the adversaries if you allegedly do something wrong under federal gun control law, and they're the ones that are trying to enforce these laws that we view to be almost always unconstitutional. But with that said, I hope you enjoyed today's episode here at the Four Boxes Diner. Make sure you subscribe to us both at YouTube and on Rumble. We're trying to get to 200,000 subscribers on YouTube. Make sure you follow me on X at Four Boxes Diner, and I look forward to talking to all of you again very, very soon here at the Four Boxes Diner.
Orders up. Table 2A.